Come in here. There you go. And make sure you take the stage. Most of you have great presents. And for those of you who don't have great presents, I will accept any presents. Mike, great to see you. I feel like I'm at an award ceremony calling out all the celebrities in the audience, people who've entertained us here over the decades, actually. Is everyone in from the lobby, John? Does it look like? All right, latecomers will be admitted to an institution. Kristen and Adam, thank you. Sorry, I'm just sucking on a little lozenge here. Should have done that earlier. But I'm going to swallow it. I'm not going to throw it to my partner like Adrian Brody did with his gum the other day. All right. Let us know, Eric, give me a thumbs up or whatever when we're starting the live stream, and I will start my live stream of consciousness. No, it's all scripted. What's that? Okay, thank you. Have a seat anywhere, folks. Thanks for coming. Who can't hear me? Is that right, Billy? Did I turn it on? Sorry, I went to college here, and we did not need mics. We were taught to project, but I will use this mic. All right, good, thank you. Thank you for speaking up. See something, say something, or hear nothing, say something. This one is on. This is for shorties like you, Kathleen. I put these up here for the couples who are coming up. I'm sorry, petite people. And I don't know, maybe I missed a thumbs up, so you let me know. Or just give me the finger. I'll take any digit. It's a digital age, you know. Good afternoon to you all in person and to all of you watching online, I imagine from around the world, either live right now or via the recording that will be available into perpetuity. Welcome to You Say You Want a Renzo-lution, the life, love, and lines of Scott Renzoni. I'm your host, G. Richard Ames. I say host because the concept behind today's event is that it's to be like one of those lifetime achievement tributes, with notable guests offering heartfelt testimonials. I had no trouble lining up an impressive roster. In fact, it was hard to pare it down. If everyone who wanted to be here today was able to be, our time together would be longer than the 5-act problem play Measure for Measure that Renzo and I were in together in 2005 at QuarryWorks Theater in Ames. Before we begin, very quickly, in case of an emergency, exits are behind you, on either side, and behind me through the loading dock. Or, the way you came in is the way you go out. Thank you, those Lost Nation folks. In case of an urgency, restrooms are accessible off of the lobby. Please silence your devices except your clapping hands and laughing mouths. And finally, please bring no food and only water into the theater. Thank you. I've known Renzo since late 1991, when we acted together for the first time right here in this wonderful arts center on this very stage. Like Renzo, I was a teenager when I first eschewed my first name to go by Rick. Such a choice of nomenclature wasn't a prerequisite to be his friend, though it helped. We expect to shed many tears today, on top of those we've wiped away since we got the news that he was gone. But consummate entertainer that he was, Renzo would have wanted to also make his final audience emit some snickers, chuckles, chortles, and guffaws. So I hope we can accomplish that together. Join me on a roller coaster of emotions, which is an apt description of his life on the stage and on the page. We'll formally open the ceremonious celebration with a benediction of sorts, a poem by my fellow Universal Life Church minister, Clifford Rames, who was also the host of Poetry Passages, on which Renzo was a guest. Come on up, Clifford. Now, it's a little walk to get up here, so keep clapping, please, until he gets up here. Come on. And this applause is all for Renzo, too. He made it.
All right. Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to join you today in this celebration of our beloved Scott Renzoni. Rest in peace. Rest in peace. Now, I've come to have an uneasy relationship with these words. I mean, I get it. And for some folks, the idea of eternal rest is probably quite appealing. And don't get me wrong, nobody loves a good snooze better than me. But I also like to get up again. I like to wake up again. Waking to the sound of my dogs, yawning in the morning, to the aroma of coffee, to good jazz or 1950s doo-wop on the radio. For me, heaven is not a dormitory with its infinite rows of bunk beds. I don't want to rest in peace. I want to get jiggy with it up there. And that's why I want heaven to be a place of singing and dancing, of summer theater in the round, of people being reunited with lost loved ones and furry friends, of rainbow connections, of poetry readings that go on and on forever. Because, you see, they do go on forever, because no one in heaven has a watch, and everyone has all the time in the world. And on that note, I would say that maybe a nap occasionally under a shady maple would be acceptable. But overall, I want heaven to be a place of merriment, of joyful awakefulness, of people having a freaky blast. And something tells me Renzo would agree with me. Right, buddy? In fact, I think he's already conspiring with the pointy-bearded William to organize heaven's first and greatest Shakespearean festival. And I hear Renzo has declared every Sunday in heaven to be Peanuts Day. And Charles Schulz himself has seconded that motion. Guess who Renzo went apple picking with? Robert Frost. And he and Emily Dickinson have been baking little cakes and sticking notes in the wrappers for the neighbors. And Renzo and Walt Whitman, well, they've been causing quite a ruckus up there. Sounding great, barbaric yelps from the rooftops. And shouting out, yelling out, well, I'll be dipped at the passing saints and angels. Quieter moments are spent, of course, up on Judavine Mountain with David Budbill, sipping tea and watching snow fall on a woodpile. And word is, Renzo has dragged poor old John Keats into a study for a lengthy discourse on life, love, and art, all while meditating on a bottle of Vermont maple syrup. And apparently it's still going on. No, wait. I'm hearing now that Renzo has 2 shovels, and he's about to wake up Seamus Heaney, and the 2 of them are going out digging. They're going to plant some potatoes, I hear. And what are we doing lately? What are we doing? In poetry, an elegy is defined as a mournful, melancholy, and plaintive poem, or funeral song, a lament for the dead. Well, I'm not going to be doing any of that today. Instead, I'm going to read you a poem called Against Elegies, and I think Renzo would get a kick out of it. Against Elegies, and it's not by me, it's by a poet named Jack Riddle. And here we go. Against Elegies. I'm tired of death's allure, of how the old beggar makes me think that rowing across the river is somehow richer, more serious than the center of a pomegranate, or my dog's way of sleeping on his paws. I'm tired of the beauty of the elegy, the tone-deaf lyricism of it all. I want death to listen for a while to Bud Powell or Art Blakey, to have to stare for 7 hours at Matisse. I want him to do stand-up and play the banjo and to have to tap dance and juggle and play Trivial Pursuit and weed my garden. I'm tired of how death throws his voice, gets us to judge a begonia, a song in the shower, an old dog. I want life's ragged way of getting along, the wasted afternoon and empty morning, the sloppy kiss. I want to stagger along between innings. I want the burnt toast, the forgotten note, and the lost pillowcase, the dime novel, and the silly putty of it all. And as you head out today into the silly putty of it all, may the Lord grant you comfort, guide you to peace, warm your hearts with love and joy, and fill your days with kindness, compassion, and perhaps a Renzoism or 2 along the way. Go forth and love each other like the gods that you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Clifford. We didn't have time to make a program for this, but if we had and he had a bio, it would say that you can next see him supporting Robert De Niro in the background of Zero Day. Is that the name of the show? Yeah. So, yeah. So multi-talented folks. And if you want to move these microphones or take them out, you could do that if you need to, but maybe use one or the other, whichever best suits you. So Scott's mom, Anne, is here today with us. She has said it would be difficult for her to get up and speak, but I know you'll know how very much your being here, either in person or virtually, means to her and to the rest of Renzo's family. Speaking of the rest of the family, I'm so pleased to present first Scott's cousin, Rob Hodgson, followed by his younger brother, Ben Hodgson, and they have some words to share with us all. So let's hear it for the old man, who came here from Poland to be here today. So I know some of you came quite a distance, but he came the furthest.
Thanks, Rick. Just a moment, please. I made a whole bunch of notes because I wanted to say just the right thing for my cousin Scott, who, sweet prince, unexpected flight into the night, I hope it's bright where he's at. In my life, in Aunt Anne's life, in my parents, and in my brother's life, there's like this Scott-sized hole. And it's interesting because I think for all of you, it's a Renzo-shaped hole, right? I mean, it's totally struck me like I have a Scott-sized hole in my life that has morphed and will morph even more today into a Renzo-sized hole, because through everything I hear you all talking about Scott, I will come to know him better. Because he wasn't an easy guy to know. We're talking about some seriously deep waters. We're talking about a man whose commitment to the word and performance and the stage was inspirational. To follow his dream the way he did is a great credit to humanity. It's a great credit to the power of him as an individual. And I can't speak much to that except to say that it was frustrating as heck whenever I came back from Europe to have Ben go like, yeah, I called him, but he's busy. But whatever, that's great. I'm sure he was doing stuff with you all, and it has been absolutely fabulous to hear and to learn about the huge number of individuals in the world who cared and loved for Scott and loved Scott, and that means the world to me. Yeah, I feel like singing a few lines of the Confutatis, but I know that the man had a conflicted relationship with that as well. Well, I mean, here's to the struggle, and here's to the triumph, and here's to the art that was created underway. We love you, Scott. We miss you, and yeah, that's it for me. That's my mic drop, you guys. Thanks so much for coming.
And thank you, Rob, for not actually dropping the mic. Eric asked that we not drop mics today.
It's a tough act to follow, but it's great to see this big group here today. Squares with what Rob was just saying. It's a surprise, and yet it's not. So in thinking about what to say about Renzo, about Scott, the first thing that came to my mind, honestly, was to say that we didn't, or that I didn't really know him, right? And I think I've heard that sentiment a lot, especially in our family since he died, that we didn't really know him. But then, in thinking about it more, I just had to call bullshit, because it's not really true. I did know him, and I knew him quite well, actually. I know that he was an incredibly devoted son who loved his mother very, very much. He would do anything for her. There's a poem that proves that, as if it needed any proving. Auntie Anne, are you with us? She's hearing it, I'm sure. But there is a poem, a really wonderful poem that he wrote a few years ago for her. That kind of says it all. And I know that, yeah, he could be a little distant, kind of a tough nut to crack, maybe a little shy, hard to get a hold of a lot of the time. But I also think that ultimately that he was like that because deep down he was a very humble humble, kind, and gentle person, not aggressive, not given to anger, never self-absorbed, which may be hard for an actor. But those aren't words that you would ever use to describe Renzo, right? I wasn't talking about you. I have this impression of actors, but my cousin was one, and he wasn't like that at all. I know that he paid a lot of attention to details, to the things that many people miss, which are the things that I think often really make the difference. I don't know much about poetry or acting, even less. But I think that his attention to detail is what made him such a good artist. His love for the smaller things. I know that the same attention to detail was what made him so hilarious, so funny. He knew what you thought was funny, and he knew why you thought it was funny, and he knew how to put it in just the right way, come at it from just the right angle with unsaid words that would make you laugh until you fell down, which he did to me many times. And I know that because almost more than anyone else, he made me fall down laughing multiple times. Most famously, onto the floor of an Irish bar in North Beach in San Francisco. He was so funny. Incidentally, it was that same bar where his trivia career began, and it's one of my claims to fame that I was the future Jeopardy champs' first trivia partner. We won pretty much every single time we played, but I was really just along for the ride. He was incredible. His memory, like a steel trap man. I can't do the impressions like he did, but he would fool the Irish girls at the bar with his accent, with his mimic. So, I know that he loved and admired my big brother Peter. We got to live together, the three of us, for a while in San Francisco in the 90s, a long time ago now. I know that he loved the Beatles, which is a trade that he taught me, and I'm forever grateful for that. I know that he loved wool and flannel, and I know that he was not afraid to mix flannel, to wear clashing flannel at the same time, which takes a lot of courage. I know that he was very humble about his talents, probably to a fault, and yet not so humble that he wouldn't get up on stage and act in dozens, maybe. I don't know how many plays, any plays. I only got to see 4 or 5, but amazing. He was also not too humble to publish his writing or to share his insights and his experience with students, which is no easy thing. So yeah, I did know him, but not as well as I would have liked to. And so that's especially so now, since his death, getting to see this outpouring from so many people who loved him so much, all these different sides of him that we didn't get to see enough of when he was still with us. So really looking forward to seeing a lot more of that today. So thank you very much.
I just want to set the record straight. This is a tribute to Renzoni, not a roast of me. And he is responsible for all this. When I said, Ben, what do you think we should be doing? He asked me, what are you telling people about the dress code? I said, Renzo would want people to come with what they were comfortable in. There are no public nudity laws in Vermont if you choose to go that way. And Ben said in a text to me, the more plaid and flannel, the better. And I said, don't say that to a man with a closet as big as mine. And so I went and got everything, and but the other day at a thrift shop, I got these Beatles socks. So that was like the crowning touch. So thank you to Resource on Pine Street for those. And thank you both brothers, sons of Sydney and Lester, for those heartfelt sentiments. I only met Ben the day after Renzo was taken from us, and I only met Rob just yesterday, but they each quickly felt like another brother to me. These sorrowful circumstances have made me realize that there was family out there I never knew I had, the family and friends of my friend. And now we're going to show some wonderful... Because I know some of you have to leave before the end of this service today, I just want to point out that that and other ones you'll see during the service, other video montages were created by Kyra Taberman, who's back there at the computer, and with wonderful albums that we got from Renzo's apartment. And the photo shows out in the lobby were created by Haley Barbieri, who's over there in this wonderfully sparkly top. who knew him from Massachusetts and a dear friend of his. So thank you to both of you for that. You may be wondering about the pachyderm figure over there, which you will see upon closer inspection is shedding a tear. Anne tells the story of when Scott was little. Well, and I'm going to do my imitation of Scott imitating Anne, if you don't mind. Well, when he was just a little boy, Ricky, he came across. He saw this animal, and he pronounced it as effluent. Effluent, and I didn't have the heart to tell him he was wrong. Because that would have been a first note he got from a director was, you're mispronouncing that, please, and you need to stress the different syllable. So when I recently came across this piece, I immediately thought of Renzo. He clearly had the memory of an elephant, which came in handy when recalling factoids to win Jeopardy and in memorizing lines for all the shows he performed in. As the saying goes, an elephant never forgets, and we will never forget Renzo. After his Catholic schooling at Mater Christi and then at Rice High School, it made sense that he would end up here at St. Michael's College, where his mom also worked around the years of his matriculation. We're fortunate today to have just a couple of his many incredible English professors here with us to tell us of their experiences with an exceptional student and ardent lover of diverse verse. Please welcome Greg Delanty, celebrated poet and professor in the English department of St. Michael's since the late 20th century.
How to follow the photographs. I knew Renzo more as a student than a person, if you understand the difference. I do remember him in my class. I do remember him in a good way in my classes way back in the early 1990s. I remember his shy presence. He was shy. He felt shy to me, you know. But he was great in the class. But I thought the best tribute I could pay, rather than talk, I got to start getting to know him personally only recently through Susanna and Billy Collins in the Facebook, and I had sent him a few messages on Facebook, and he got back to me, which was nice. But I'm going to read, the best tribute to do for him is to read two short poems, and then one short poem of my own, which will make sense when you read them. But I thought you get a sense of Renzo from the two poems that were originally published in the college's literary and arts magazine, the Onion River Review. Like the five editors, four of them are here anyway at the moment, Aaron and Victoria and Kathleen and Anthony. And they're doing the new one now. But these two poems were in the Onion River Review back in 1991, 92. So I was at this reading. The first poem is, for Galway Canal at a reading. I was at that reading. I remember it. And it's just, there's something beautiful about it, I think. Something also of his humor, for sure. It's about 12 lines or so. Front row, center. I wondered if you noticed the look on my face that said, yes, this is poetry. This is good. I was thrilled to see you have the same habit as I. You took a drink of water between each poem. Planning, like you, to write works as much creating as created. I approached and watched as you signed the only thing I had to offer, a sheet torn from a notebook of my poetry. And then a very short line, 4-line poem, which I always say, and there are some students of mine here, that you don't be writing about autumn and leaves and so forth, but he gets away with it with this last line. he has. When the leaves, which have been spiraled by an autumn breeze, stopped spinning, they hung for a moment in the air, longing perhaps for the certainty of branches. Kind of beautiful at the end, isn't it? I mean, that's an achievement, Scott. And you'll hear other of his poems, and I actually didn't. I'd love to see all the poems myself published somewhere, or I'd like to see them myself. But there are some very good poems, and I don't praise easy when it comes to poems. I'm dishonest in everything else in my life, but when it comes to poetry, I'm honest. I'm going to read one of my own, and it kind of follows Clifford's Star of Heaven and so forth. I am here now. I know I'm in a Catholic college, grew up in the Catholic world, but I'm an unbeliever. But there's possibilities, yes. And this poem is called The Event Horizon. I'm also a quantum physics and space buff a bit. I love these documentaries, do you understand? And this is this short 12-line poem, I think. 12-line poem. And then I'm going to leave it at that and leave everything else to everybody here. And thank you. The Event Horizon. Perhaps those zones where our souls are said to end up are possible. That region the good inhabit. The one where the imperfect are burnished perfect, the infernal place of no hopers. The afterlife is no more unbelievable than us landed here on this joint spinning top, whirling crookedly through space. Especially now, the brains proclaim zones where time's altered kaput, dimensions where stars slip through self-generated cracks in space, and so much more, not dreamt of in our reality. Truly, after all, the soul may have somewhere to go beyond the only event horizon we know of, or point of no return. Unbelievable. Thank you.
Thanks to Greg. Now, I lived next door to Greg for a few years on North Avenue, and but I've never felt closer to him than today when we shared a hug over our lost friend. And if you ever give up that vest, Greg, I have room in my closet for it. So, next, please give a warm welcome to Christina Root, writer and professor in St. Michael's English and Humanities departments, where she's been influencing young literary minds across multiple millennia.
Hello. Only, not multiple millennia, I don't think. That's only two. Multiple implies more than two in my mind.
Language discussion.
Okay. I'm here in my own right, but also to represent Nick Clary, who was a formidable and wonderful professor in our department for many years, and who would love to be here, but isn't feeling well enough to be. And he was a true mentor to Scott, or Renzo. So I'll read that first and then add some of my own comments. Many on the faculty knew Scott Renzoni as a student while he was on campus during his years here. Some few, like me, knew him as a friend during his years after graduation. We were frequently in contact on Facebook, exchanging observations, remembrances, and reminders about Shakespeare plays as well as about productions. He was always astute, frequently critical, often complimentary, and very funny. He was active with the Shakespeare Festival, especially after his success on Jeopardy and after putting his winnings toward further study at Shakespeare and Company in Lenox. From time to time, he would share with me his deep desire to play the title role in a production of Hamlet, which I came to believe was at the top of his bucket list, the role he most wanted to play on stage. As far as I know, he never got to perform in a full production of the play, though he knew the major soliloquies by heart and could recite them with conviction and without prompting. I think he would have made a moving and credible Prince Hamlet on the stage. We will never witness his performance in that role, now that flights of angels have sung him to his rest. Had he lived and played Hamlet, most likely to great applause, he would undoubtedly have gone on to play an equally memorable King Lear. Imagining Renzo as a magnificent and tragic Lear, we might think of him today as we mull over this modified passage from the closings of both this play and Hamlet. The weight of this sad time we must obey, speak what we feel, not what we ought to say. We who are here today must remember Scott aright to the unsatisfied, for we shall not see his like again. So that's from Nick Cleary. I came the same year to St. Mike's that Renzo started school, and I had the great privilege of teaching him in a class on romantic poets in his junior year. And he was a wonderful student, as you would imagine. What other people have said, he was shy, but he just had an air about him. He had an air, an originality about him that was remarkable. And whole years are a blur to me, but that class is incredibly vivid in his role in it. And just because we've been talking about clothes, I used to think that he had clothes that looked as though they hadn't been bought in any store. You know, just this quality of originality that extended to what he was wearing. And he also, I remember, carried a satchel with him, and I always wanted to know what was in there. And occasionally he would let me see, and they were usually old books, old, tattered, what looked like first editions of something from somewhere. And it changed his gait as he walked, because it was a heavy satchel. And he was in a class, of people who were being introduced to romantic poetry for the first time, but he came in with a deep, deep knowledge already and was able to recite poems without, from memory. And I would have thought he was lonely, but there was another boy in the class named Mike Russell, who was almost equally smart and talented and artistic, went on to be a writer. And they used to feed off each other in their interests and their abilities. And conversation moved very fast. So I was like one of the other students trying to keep up. And one of the things that I remember was we read the poem Lamia by Keats, which is a long, it's a wonderful story, but it's very philosophical and challenging. And he and Mike had a lively debate on how to read the last line of the poem, the last lines of the poem. Wait, I wrote them down. Yeah. So it's this tragic story of a woman who was also a mythological snake, and she gets outed at the very last moment as not human after she's just married her great love, who is human, and he ends up dying in that moment. And once she's disappeared. And the last line is about their wrapping him in the marriage cloak. But he and Mike set up a debate whether the last word was wound or wound. And I was like, it's wound. It rhymes with found and round. And but it was so wonderful because, of course, the word wound was hidden in wound, and it reverberated in a way that it just felt like a perfect conversation to me, where we were engaged in the serious act of close reading with this playful, ironic, wry touch that could hear wound in wound, both as a funny moment and also as a deeply serious one. So those are my memories of him in class. And then in the next year and a half, when I didn't have him in class anymore, I often saw him in the hall because my office was across from Nick Clary's office, and he was usually waiting to get in to see Nick Clary, and that's when he would give me a peek into the satchel. But also, I also just knew what wonderful conversations they were having and what it meant to him to find this man who was equally interested in performance as he was in plays as literature, and followed him in anything that he was interested in. So, so he's a part of my great memories here at St. Mike's. And thank you for having this lovely tribute for him. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. And Mike Russell, if you're watching from somewhere in the world, please don't feel bad about the fact that you were just barely second to Renzo. And just a note, Christina gave me some feedback on my speech. If you give me feedback, you get feedback from the microphone. So, no, we didn't plan that. And honestly, I was thinking about it more. Before I was much of a writer myself, I was a math whiz in like 2nd, 7th, and 8th grade or whatever on the math track. So I was thinking of a multiple more like the multiples of 1 are 1, 2, 3, 4, that. But I should know better in this crowd than to come at it from a mathematical angle. So, so let's see, we've got covered Nick here, and thanks to Nick Clary for making those remarks to be shared. Before we graduate to his grown-up life as a purveyor and penner of poems, I'll mention that his senior project as a drama major on this stage combined his passions in a play about Shelley, Byron, and others, which Greg Niquette was in, and that he directed and acted in, Renzo did. And as I recall, it was a bloody good show. And now we have some excerpts from Clifford Rame's poetry passages.
Joining me today as my special guest is Scott Renzoni, aka
Everybody close your eyes and just pretend you're asleep.
Joining me today as my special guest is Scott Renzoni, aka Renzo. Scott is a poet and actor. Hi, Scott.
Hello.
Thanks so much for taking the time to share with us some of your memories and stories about David Budbill.
Oh, of course. Thanks for having me.
So Scott has appeared as the character David in 2 productions of David Budbill's play Judavine. Judavine has been described as a new American song, a song of the down and out, the neglected and ignored, a song of the unsung.
I met David in 2007 when a place called Lost Nation Theater in Montpelier, Vermont, was putting on a production. His opening night note to me said, "I've never enjoyed my own words in Judavine more than I am this time with you doing them." It struck me to the heart, and it was one of the best moments of my career as an actor, certainly. So the play evolved along with the poems. More poems would happen. They'd go into the stage version. Someone on stage might throw in a comment, an ad lib or something, and everyone kind of agrees, well, that's pretty good, isn't it? Okay, great. And that would find its way into the final text. So it's always evolving. I saw when I was quite young, maybe 11 or 12, one of the first productions of Judavine. I remembered for all those decades the impact that it had on these words and the immediacy of them, the passion with which the actors spoke them. And so to be able to be a part of that myself all that time later was something else.
So thanks so much for watching. We really hope you enjoyed this celebration of the life and poetry of David Budbill. We'll see you again real soon. Stay safe and stay well. Bye.
So here we are at the end of National Poetry Month. My thanks to all of you for watching and liking and commenting and sharing. Do stop by and see us here at the bookstore in Lenox. We'd love to see you and hear what you're reading and what you're enjoying. And to close out National Poetry Month, got to give you one of my very, very favorites. This is Driving Home at Night by David Budbill. Midnight. Outside the car, it is 15 below, a foot of new snow. The village is deserted, dark except for 8 street lamps and the light in the window at Jerry's garage that says beer. The smell of wood smoke seeps into the car. Judavine. Ugliest town in northern Vermont, except for maybe East Judavine. Disheveled, wretched Judavine. My town is beautiful in the night. It is beautiful because its couple hundred souls have given up their fear, their poverty and worry, and for a few hours now, they know only the oblivion of sleep. And the town lies quiet in their ease. Thanks, everyone.
I'm honored now to present David's daughter, Nadine Budbill, with her remarks about Renzo's work with her father's works.
This is going to be tricky. So I'm Nadine Budbill. I'm David's daughter and literary executor. And Renzo, clearly, was a devoted fan of my father's work, and over the past few years had become my right-hand man in managing all things David Budbill. We had several projects in the works, including a Speakers Bureau talk and the republication of this book, Judavine, the collected poems. The new and revised edition will be coming out in mid-April, and my heart breaks that Renzo will not get to hold it in his hands. But hopefully, wherever his spirit lives on, he will be pleased that the dedication page reads, "In memory of Scott Renzoni, actor, poet, and Judavine fan extraordinaire, who we tragically lost during work on this new edition. If I had the difficult task of pulling out one element of my father's work that Renzo most embodied, and that most embodied Renzo, it would be Judavine. As actor and writer Abby Page, I don't know if Abby is here, said to me recently, if there is a heaven, Renzo's looks a lot like Judavine. As you heard, Renzo played Judavine's narrator character, David, in 2 productions at Lost Nation Theater. He also played Tommy, a Vietnam vet, in one of those productions. With David in particular, it was as though the role was made for Renzo. He brought his gentle, tender, soulful presence to it in a way that was and probably will remain unrivaled. I feel sorry for anyone who has to play it next. Truly. My father spent hours in Judavine rehearsals, giving notes to the actors and director, Kim Bent. He was a tough critic and did not dole out praise easily. On opening night in 2007, he gave Renzo this note, which you've already heard from Renzo, but I think I'll read again because I have the note, which says, Renzo, David, Tommy, I've never enjoyed my own lines more in Judavine than I am this time with you doing them. And the combination of your David and your Tommy is perfect. Your friend, David. Renzo, I think, aware of the magnitude of these words, kept this note with him for the past 18 years. Rick was kind enough to bring it back for us from Lenox. I trust that somewhere, perhaps in a heaven that looks a lot like Judavine, Renzo and my father are talking poetry, theater, and politics, and reveling in one another's wonderful company. Thank you.
Nadine, I know Renzo felt as strongly about your father and you as you and your father felt about him. And we're so glad that you and your mom could be here today. Renzo was not only a book reader and a book buyer, but he was, in different phases of his life, a bookseller. And in fact, in recent years, a seller of books from a cellar full of books. We're grateful to have with us Matthew Tenenbaum, owner of the bookstore in Lenox. Keep it up, folks, at least some of you. Come on. Renzo wanted to give us all a little cardio today.
So this is where he acted.
For 4 years. Yeah.
This is lovely. This is lovely for Renzo. You know, David came to the bookstore years ago. Did you know that? And played the bells. What do you call those? Bowls. Yeah. I don't know if Renzo was there then. I can't remember when it was. Hi. We'll have a conversation later. Yes, I'm Matt Tannenbaum from the bookstore in Lenox, where Renzo graced us with his presence. I represent also Shepard and Rowan, who worked and played with him, and I also represent, I want to say, Haley and Lydia and Nairi, who are helping to take his place, helping to do the work that we need to do after he's no longer with us. It's said, I've heard it said, that sometimes it's hard to find your people in the world. And we all at the bookstore take great comfort in knowing that we were his people. And I'm sure that many of us here in the theater today, would like to say the same thing. I hired him twice. I didn't fire him, but I hired him twice. The first time was he was walking by, he lived upstairs of the bookstore, and the first time he was walking by, and I had the idea to, as Rick said, I had a cellar full of books, and we had an open space in the building a couple of doors down, and I asked the landlord if I could bring some books up. I just wanted to see what they looked like, because they've been collecting them in the basement for 40 years. And Renzo was walking by, and I said, hey, Renzo, you want to help with a project I have? And the next thing I knew, he was my bookseller at the next door bookstore. And we brought up with his gout, on and off, he brought up cartons after cartons and cartons of books and brought them next door. And then we didn't price them. We had all these books, and there was no way to price them. I said, Renzo, you're a book guy. You can tell the people what price they can pay. And everybody enjoyed it. And when that summer was over, his job was gone, and a couple of weeks later, a week or so later, we were moving some furniture, and I realized we needed some more help, so I called him, and he came down, and he started talking to Shepard and Rowan, and he was so funny, and he told such great stories that I had to hire him again. And his voice is still on Rowan's telephone message. If you try to call Rowan Stanton and she doesn't answer the phone, Rowan what's his name? Renzo's voice comes on, and his accent. And who was talking about the bar in North Beach, the Irish bar in North Beach? So you know that story about the when he's putting on his Irish accent, and he had this Irish accent, and he was playing to the women, and he walked over to him at one point after a while, and he said, "Listen, you know, I'm a bartender, but you know, I'm also an actor, and I'm auditioning for a play, and I have to play an American. I wonder if you could hear my accent and tell me how I do." Besides being bereft of him in Lenox, we are gutted by his loss. We do keep him alive. We tell stories. We tell his stories. We tell stories about him that I think he would be beaming to hear. He set himself up quite comfortably when I hired him the second time. We had just things had changed at the bookstore after the lockdown, and we needed a third station to receive books, and so we decided, well, Renzo's here. He can do this receiving, and we'll get a new workstation right at the end of the bar. We have the bar, the Get Lit wine bar at the store, and it was just perfect. And he established himself with his accoutrements, with his he would check in all the books, and he loved doing it. And it was such a pleasure for me to have someone so enjoy his work at the store. One of the things I like to think we do at the bookstore is, if you're good at something, we let you do it. And Renzo loved making signs. Was that something he used to do other places? Does anybody know? Did he do that at the theater, at the Majestic? And he had these signs, and he had his colored pencils and markers, and I have an example of some of his signs. And most of them were in English, but some of them, a couple of them were in Gaelic. The one in the washroom was "Stay healthy, wash your hands," but it was written in Gaelic, and then in translation, so I could figure out what it was. But we got tote bags at the bookstore, and he put up a sign that said, "The best way to carry books since hands." For our return policy, you know, a store has to have a return policy. You're welcome to come back anytime. And at the bar, it was drink responsibly, read recklessly. And for the other door at the wine bar that was closed most of the time, so he had a sign that said "Use other door," but it was in Gaelic. And I can't tell you a number of times of people who spoke Gaelic who came in the front door and said, "Who wrote that? Why do you have that sign there?" And sometimes he was there and he would talk to them. Sometimes I would have to answer for them. A couple of other bookstore stories. As they say, he lived upstairs, and Housatonic Street is a one-way street. Renzo always knew, even before he worked for us, he would come down and tell us he knew when the summer season was beginning, because when he slept with his window open early in the morning, he would hear the first local say to the first tourist, "Wrong way. It's a one-way street." He would come down and say, "Well, summer's here." The other thing that he enjoyed about the living upstairs was when we'd have our Harry Potter nights. Harry Potter, of course, would open the store at midnight and sell books until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then one night, one Harry Potter night, Renzo came in at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, took a look at me sitting at the front desk exhausted, and he went over to the poetry section and he picked up an Allen Ginsberg book and put it down on the desk. And I said, "You're our guy, Harry Potter is one thing, but Allen Ginsberg is, And of course, he lived above city lights in San Francisco, and it's an honor for me to have had someone who lived and loved living above City Lights bookstore, lived and loved living above my bookstore in Lenox. And if I'm going to mention Ferlinghetti's bookstore and Lawrence Ferlinghetti and Allen Ginsberg in one sentence, in one paragraph, I have to say Renzo was a big Beat fan, and there's nobody he loved more than Jack Kerouac. And Kerouac's birthday is this Wednesday, and this will be the first time that I won't see Renzo on Jack's birthday. This is one of the hardest things about losing someone you love, that there's no one left to share what you shared with each other. Anne told me a story once when I asked her about did Renzo always like to read? Oh, and I'm not going to do what Rick tried to do. Well, maybe I will. And would say, when Scott was bad, I would have to punish him and send him to his room. And after an hour, I said, "Okay, Scott, you can come out now." But he wouldn't come out. He would just sit there and read. And that's, of course, how he got to get on Jeopardy. And as was mentioned, he used some of that Jeopardy money to come to Lenox, to take the acting workshop, to be at Shakespeare & Company, and the rest is history, as they say. He only worked for me for like maybe 4 years, 4.5 years. But of course, it's hard now to remember a time that he wasn't with us. I still look over from my front desk to where he used to be, and I'm caught short because he's not there. Someday maybe I'll look over there and be not surprised not to see him. But that day has not come yet.
Renzo was fortunate to befriend poet Billy Collins, who, among many other honors, served as U.S. Poet Laureate. We're all thrilled that both Billy and his wife, Susanna, could be with us here today, all the way from California, right? Florida. Well, still a long way. That's right, they moved recently. Come on up, folks. And this is the first coupling that the microphones are meant for, so we'll see how well it works.
Billy didn't want to come out. Oh, you did? Okay. You never know what your spouse is going to do. I'm happy to be able to be here, and I hope that's all I need to say, and I'm going to start crying because I loved Renzo so much. and I'm going to buck up. I'm happy to be here with you to celebrate the life of Scott Renzoni. I've known Renzo since 2020, when my husband started his poetry broadcast on Facebook. Renzo would write to me and send me birthdays of the poets and other things that he thought Billy might want to talk about. Anything he wanted to ask Billy about poetry or jazz or anything else, he asked through me. He was polite and deferential that way. But through that, kind-hearted, clever, interesting Renzo became my precious friend. We texted, emailed, and messaged. We gossiped and traded news. We talked about poetry. We talked about Jeopardy. We talked about Wordle and Octordle, and he knew everything. And did you know that until recently that Scrabble tiles were made from Vermont maple? Yeah, I learned that from Renzo. Sometimes if I was up late posting on Facebook, a message from Renzo would pop up and we would chat until we couldn't anymore. Sometimes I shared gossip from the poetry biz. And if I had known Renzo was going to leave us early, I would have told him everything. I would have dished and dished. Renzo told me stories about his mother. But also, Renzo kept track of things in my life that mattered to me. He always made me feel seen. For instance, in our new house, the first personal mail we received was from Renzo. Of course it was. That's the kind of friend he was, and not just to me, I know that, to so many of you. What I really treasure is seeing Renzo coming into his own with his poetry. He was a great poet, and it was good to see him gain that confidence and think, okay, yeah, I deserve this. I deserve the attention and the publications. Oh, my goodness. When Billy and I finally got to meet Renzo face-to-face in the bookstore, I said, hello, old friend, and I gave him a big hug. And I thought we would be friends forever. I thought we'd be old people reminiscing about the poetry broadcast and the crazy days that we are in now. I had that actual thought just days before I found out that my friend Renzo had died. And by the way, dying doesn't seem like something Renzo would do. I got a big kick out of Renzo's recounting one of his mother's conversations with a friend where she lives. After Mrs. Renzoni said Scott was a poet, the woman said, well, maybe one day he'll get to meet Billy Collins. And Renzo said this was his mother's F around and find out moment. And she waited a second and she said, as a matter of fact, Billy and his wife took Scott to dinner recently. So he loved telling me that story because it's a story that delighted his mother, and she told the story to Billy today. The last message Renzo wrote to me was, all kind of hugs, till next time, and I'm heartbroken that there won't be one. Among the watchers of Billy's poetry broadcast is a devoted group of super fans from all over the world, and the name of their group is the Cool People, the Night People, and I'm here to represent them, and Clifford Rames is one of them as well. They're devastated by the loss of their special boy, Renzo, whom they claim as family. Many of them are watching this live stream, and they would have been here in person if they could have, but make no mistake, they are here. This is a poem written by one of the Cool People, Night People, Carol and Curtis Mahoney. And she wrote it after we all found out that we'd lost Renzo. It's called A Poem for Renzo, Who Lovingly Fussed Over the Small, Off-Course Birds Who Flew Into the Bookstore. The crows have a lot to say today. It is not the snow. The falling snow is too spare, too soft to muster or to mute their urgent words. There is no wildling wind to cause or to carry their cries, no aching, howling cold to inspire or to interpret their insistent, cadenced cause. I don't pretend to know their sorrow. I don't pretend the crows are speaking to me or for me, but their raw refrains sound right. The snow falls, the sun falls, and the dusky crows are gathering, are calling each other to return to nests in evergreen, in grief. The crows fall quiet. Their ink-stained quills carry their stories, their songs, their sorrow, their solace away from me and into the night. Tender, fragile flakes of snow fall gently onto darkling feathers, fall and rise again on unbroken, homeward wings. Okay, I'd like to say so much more, but I'm going to end by reading a poem by Renzo. One night early last year, in 2024, when we were chatting, he sent me a photo of this poem on his computer screen. It printed out like a rainbow. He wrote, "On my walk a couple of summers ago, I saw a dead sparrow a few days in a row. Someone had to immortalize her. The title, If It Be Not Now, is from Hamlet. The lines are, if it be not now, yet it will come. The readiness is all," which means, of course, that if something is fated, there's no escaping it. If It Be Not Now by Scott Renzoni. Because the dead sparrow was in the middle of the sidewalk with no ants around it, I knew she couldn't have been there long. We both woke up this morning, both went about the busyness of living. I have no idea what sparrows know of death. I'm sure they think of it less than I do. She had no thoughts in any way I'd understand. Perhaps only at the moment of change, a brief flash of a new confusion, then the expanse and duration of something like a sky, but always, always.
I must say I'm envious of a lot of you who got to know or knew Renzo better than I did. Despite Ben's words, I'm one of those people who didn't have much of a chance to know him very well. I first knew him through his words, but not his poems or his writing, but the comments he would make on this poetry broadcast that my wife inspired. And one that kept going for 52 months. There was a place to make comments, and these comments came in from someone named Renzo, which sounded like a great name. Sounded like a detergent in one way. On the other hand, on the higher level, I could picture Pope Renzo I. But his comments were so distinctive. And smart. He became like a character, a personality in this mix of comments. He was very distinctive voice, ironic and smart, and that just is going to make matters worse. In fact, it's your fault entirely that I'm this way. keep your distance. So he became a verbal little voice, Renzo comment. But he, as I said, he became a personality among all these other people. I met him twice. I met him at the bookstore. It was nice that they had a bar. Good. I like this place. I also noticed that in the poetry section there was a sign, and instead of saying poetry, it said pear tree, which he got from me, I think, as a parody of how the British pronounce poetry, pear tree. And I'm going out to pick a pear from the pear tree. I really enjoy British poetry, pear tree. So I felt at home there, and Matt was our host. The next time I met him was in Albany. I was at the end of a book tour, and I gave a reading there, and some Holy Cross alumni showed up and had a little reception afterward at another bar that a Holy Cross guy ran. And we got to talk. When I came in, there was only about 15 or 18 people there. But Renzo was at the bar, at the corner of the bar. You know, I knew he was a savvy solo drinker, because that's where you sit if you're alone. You can check out the other drinkers and also watch your back. You know, it's a protective place to be. But there we cut through a lot of small talk and started talking about the afterlife, which has been a subject here, obviously. And he was amused to hear my theory about the afterlife, which was at that point that if there is an afterlife, that will be very interesting. We hope, because it's going to go on forever. So that it would remain a subject of constant interest would be the hope. On the other hand, I said that if there is no afterlife, there would be no regrets, because we'll be dead. And no one will be disappointed to find out there's no afterlife, because you won't find it out. So he was entertained by that. We had a good time. And then William Kennedy showed up, the bard, sort of, or the novelist who put Albany on the novel map. And Renzo and I enjoyed the pun that we both were very taken with Kennedy's writing, the Albany trilogy. And then we had our photograph taken with him. So we were taken with him in two regards. And this was, I knew we'd become friends. Just because he liked to play with language. And the subject we're talking about became secondary. Who cares about the subject? When there's words that gotta get the blubbering prize up here. Good Lord. I thought I'd be totally dry. And it's her. We'll talk to her later. Anyway, we were very at ease with each other, and I really thought this would, develop into a lasting friendship. Well, then there were his poems, which I didn't read until later, and I was really struck, and like Greg Delante, I'm not much of a praiser of poems, not my automatic response. But I was really taken with his poems, the very heartfelt, but and playful and ironic. But also the craft was so precise; it held in check all the heartfelt, emotional content of it. There was a dignity in the composition and the care. he put into assembling these poems. We had North Beach in common, too, we discovered, because I was out there somehow during the summer of love, and I visited North Beach a lot during my days in California. We agreed that the Haight-Ashbury was basically drugs and music, but the North Beach was literature and alcohol. And we were both of the latter persuasion. So I'm going to read a poem of his, and then a little poem of mine. And it's a poem of, it's a form called the villanelle, and some of you know it, but it's a very tight form. It has, like the sonnet, it has an exact number of lines, not 14, but 19. There are 5 3-line stanzas, and then a concluding 4-line stanza. I'll try to keep the professor at bay here, but the main thing about it is there are 2 repeat lines, and they occur 8 times. So once you have the 2 lines, first of all, they have to be very serviceable because you're going to hear them again and again and again. And they recycle, and then they are used to end the poem. And it's a poem that shows that he had a lot of bar sense, musical sense, and without ruining it, the surprise of it, it's called Johnny Hartman at the Jukebox. And Johnny Hartman, if you didn't know, is an amazing baritone singer of jazz songs, and as if his voice was divinely created for that purpose. But it's also a poem more pointedly about how music, different kinds of music are best at different times of day. And it's kind of criticism of getting at that really wrong. And it focuses on the poem of Hartman's, the song is sort of a touchstone for Hartman, called Lush Life, written by Billy Strayhorn. Johnny Hartman at the Jukebox. Johnny Hartman on the jukebox will never sound quite right if played when it's 2 in the afternoon. The middle of a day like this is simply not the time for Johnny Hartman at the Jukebox. There are many songs other than Lush Life that could be played when it's 2 in the afternoon. The other side of night, instead of a bright, warm afternoon, is when Johnny Hartman on the Jukebox is all right, when old and new regrets meet to buy each other's drinks, when it's 2 in the afternoon. Shadows are just mistakes of light. Please place something else instead of Johnny Hartman on the Jukebox when it's 2 in the afternoon. Renzo. Yeah. And I'll just read a short poem of mine called, 10 lines long, called The Dead, and it's about kind of the way we like to think of the dead, especially at gatherings like this. The dead are always looking down on us, they say, while we are putting on our shoes or making a sandwich. They're looking down through the glass-bottom boats of heaven as they row themselves slowly through eternity. They watch the tops of our heads moving below on earth, and when we lie down in a field or on a couch, drugged perhaps by the hum of a warm afternoon, they think we are looking back at them, which makes them lift their oars and fall silent and wait like parents for us to close our eyes.
Thank you so much. And I just want to mention, Renzo's dad died before he was 2, and his mom never remarried. She was a wonderful single mom. But he wore those shirts of his dad's, those arrow shirts, in his headshot and stuff, wore them for years, and they're in Anne's closet now still. But he had other father figures in his life, poetically, literarily. Matthew Tenenbaum was a father figure to him. Billy Collins became a father figure to him. Nick Clary, theatrically, Don Rathgeb, who ran the department here with his wife. Somebody who was a director. But anyway, we, let's see. We couldn't find videos of Renzo reading his own poetry, but there are, well, a little bit. No, actually, we didn't have any of him reading his own, right? But there are copies in the lobby of several of his pieces. Please take some. We hope someday to issue a digital collection of his works. Renzo knew very well that the show must go on, and so on with the show. A little over. I didn't account for all these tears, Renzo. I didn't think you knew everybody was going to cry so much over you. We now transition to the other great love of his life, the theater. So we don't have a lot of theatrical footage to show you, given copyright laws, but the reviews from Vermont critics like Jim Lowe and Alex Brown, along with those from Massachusetts media outlets, call out his considerable talents and versatility. He was more versatile than this family heirloom table that turns into a chair. He was that convertible. And so joining us now are some representatives, very dear friends, chosen families from companies he's most associated with. And I just want to mention, she's not going to come up and talk, but Haley Barbieri, who made the photo, did so much in the lobby out here in a mirror image of what she did in Lenox a few weeks ago. She hails from Housatonic, Massachusetts, a town the street he lived on is named for. And among the many ways she proved her affection for our good buddy was taking care of his cat when he was away, and recently even taking in his cat. And there's also from Majestic Theater here is not going to speak, or in this part, maybe in Act 2, Jack Grigoli. And so Grigoli, Barbieri, Renzoni, you didn't have to be Italian to be his friend, but it helps. So our next couple of, thank you, Haley, for being so devoted in your kinship with Renzo. And talk about a star-studded show today. Our next couple of Capitol guests are a couple from the Capitol, Kim Bent and Kathleen Keenan, founding artistic director and producing artistic director, respectively, of Lost Nation Theater.
Is this mic mine?
Oh my goodness. Think how good it is to get up and move around. I'm sorry. Sorry you're still sitting there. Yes, this is some kind of wonderful, Rick, putting this all together. Thank you.
Oh, you go. I'm going to do what I do best, and that's kibitz. So I'm just going to interrupt Kim when I have something to say.
So I thought of our role here today is to remind everyone, clue everyone in about Renzo's theatrical history at Lost Nation Theater. We actually happen to have a record of that, so it wasn't too hard to do. I think the first thing we should say is that first production that Renzo did at Lost Nation was Mother Courage, in which Rick also participated as an actor. Mother Courage and Her Children in 2004. And then we also did that year Lie in the Mind, You Can't Take It With You, and the Scottish play, all of which plays Renzo was also in. This was about little less than 10 years after you and he graduated from St. Michael's. And as Rick was explaining to me when we arrived today, this was made possible by the fact that Renzo won this Jeopardy money and could afford to buy a car so they could actually get to Montpelier. And so that was the beginning. And then in 2005, we did our original production, Stone, and we also did The Tempest, and Renzo was in both of those. And the following year, 2006, Romeo and Juliet, and then in 2007, Judavine and Henry V, which we actually brought to Champlain College on tour as well. So that was a 4-year run for Renzo, and then I think what happened is he went off to Lenox, Mass, and worked in a bookstore, maybe worked with the Shakespeare and Company, that kind of thing. Anyway, he came back to us in 2013 for a production of The Crucible, in which the only play in which all of us were actually on, the three of us were actually on, and
Rick.
4 of us were actually on stage together in the same play as actors. And then the following year, 2014, Durang Bang, directed by Margot Wickham, who's here today. The 39 Steps, Our Town, and Comedy of Errors, 4 plays, all of which Renzo was in. 2015, we did our 10th anniversary production of Stone at a Granite Museum in Barrie, and then The Hound of the Baskervilles, As You'd Like It, Treasure Island, all of which Renzo was in. Then in 2016, we did Sylvia, he was in that. And then 2017, our very special production of Judavine, in which he, for the second time, played David. So there's another break in the sequence, but in 2021, during COVID, we did a reading of a new play by Jeannie Beckwith called Sam and Jim in Hell on Zoom, and Renzo
Played James. Ooh,
yes,
played James Joyce and
James
made it
Joyce.
to show number 20 with us, which was a goal.
He was keeping track, of course, and 20 was an important number for him. He wanted that to happen, and it did. The signature roles, the favorite roles for me personally in that history, of course, David in Judavine, Benvolio in Romeo and Juliet, the Italian sculptor, and 3 or 4 other wonderful ethnic parts in Stone, Silvius in As You Like It, the Clown in the 39 Steps, Watson in The Hound of the Baskervilles. 20 shows, 10 seasons.
Can I say my favorites?
Yes, please.
So, yes, I have many in common with Kim in terms of my favorites. My first favorite was when he played Donald in You Can't Take It With You, his first year with us. And I think it's emblematic of capturing Renzo's heart, because here's this, Donald is this kind of hapless, maybe a throwaway role, but here was this really smart, very gifted with words man who just, for me, shined the most when he was playing this hapless guy. So I'm just like, woo, doop-de-doo. I don't know. He was very, very funny in those roles, and so I loved him as Donald. I loved him as Watson in a 3-actor quick change comedy of The Hound of the Baskervilles, which I got to direct, and I just think it was, yes, Staff is snapping. Yes, one of his best roles. Anyway, and another favorite moment I have, a lot of you spoke of his attention to detail. And when he was playing multiple roles in Sylvia, I remember that we had one exchange where he was like, oh, his psychiatrist, it wasn't quite right or something. And he was playing it as a woman. And I realized it's because you're not tucking your dress when you sit. So we spent a little time learning how women tuck their dress when they sit. And, you know, it's like crazy, the things that stand out for you. Other favorites for me in terms of dedication and attention to detail is he did it in Judavine and other shows, coming up with like, hey, these would be great pre-show songs, and making a pre-show list. And also, thank you, Rick, for the homage to The Way You Came In is the Way You Go Out, the fire speech at Lost Nation Theater. We have to do that in order to have the theater in place. And when we were doing 39 Steps and Hound of the Baskervilles, you don't want to interrupt the flow of the show. You want to get right in, and Renzo really helped me rewrite that so it would fit into the show. And when we were doing Hound of the Baskervilles, he came up with his own prop fire speech for dummies that we started the show with, that he made it, and everybody who was a regular at LNT really enjoyed that. Anyway, it's kind of a fun memory for me.
Here's part of the family.
Absolutely.
So for the second part of this, I'm going to just read something I wrote, because I've done this kind of thing before, and I tend to fall apart if I don't have something to hang on to. So this is it. As theater people, we love to claim that what we do brings people together, but in the normal course of living our lives, we all experience at least two events that bring us together: marriage and death. So first of all, Renzo, I want to say thank you for bringing us here today to remember you, celebrate you, and reconnect through you. And I want to also say how deeply grateful I am that you gave so much of your time and talent to Lost Nation Theater. For nearly 2 decades, you were the quintessential, indispensable utility team player in our loose, informal repertory company family. There wasn't a part you couldn't play, so the only difficulty in casting you involved figuring out the best fit given everyone else's limitations. Your innate quality of empathetic attentiveness made you a wonderfully sympathetic scene partner. That same quality inspired audiences to immediately believe and trust you when you confided in them directly as the narrator. Your deadpan sincerity made you the perfect straight man in comedies. Your verbal facility, that's a demonstration of what is not verbal facility, with accents made you the obvious and perfect choice to play lots of colorful characters in key supporting roles. So you were, quite simply, our all-in-one go-to guy, our Jimmy Stewart, Walter Cronkite, Bob Newhart, Walter Brennan. Makes me happy to say that, and it makes me think that when we have lots of time on our hands in eternity, maybe that could be the prompt for an improv we could work on that begins, these 4 guys walk into a bar, see, and, well, I'm sure it would be a hit. Secondly, I want to say I'm sorry we never got to spend more time with each other outside the theater. I knew from overhearing backstage conversations about post-show gatherings at late-night bars that you were a great storyteller, loved good jokes, and had a wealth of knowledge about a lot of things. But the times I got to have those kinds of interactions with you firsthand were way too few and far between. Yeah, I regret that, but at this stage in my life, I've come to terms with it as one small piece of straw and the haystack of downsides that comes with running a small theater company. Truth be known, Renzo, as your director, there were times when you did drive me crazy. But the joys always healed the frustrations. The deep satisfactions more than made up for any minor disagreements. And the rewards of working with you to tell a story in a way that would most effectively share with others moments of deep, close, living human connection made every project we worked on much more than worthwhile. Andre de Shields said in his Tony acceptance speech that achieving a goal of getting to the top of the mountain only makes it possible to see higher mountains beyond that have now become visible. I think his point is that the goal is never the goal. Dealing honestly and fairly with others on the journey is sometimes the most and always the least we can ask of ourselves. In David Budbill's Judavine, Alice Twist told you many, many times, "Hell, David, a man's a genius just for looking like himself." And as David, your response was always, "That's good, Alice. I might use that." Renzo. This Renzo-lution is a fantastic idea. Your name is literally the chant we need for the times. And I'll keep invoking it as long as I am able. You left too soon. We had so much more work to do together. I look forward to seeing you down the road. Okay.
Thank you both. And I know he left no theatrical will, but I think I know him well enough to know that he would have said, give any parts you're going to give to Rick, to me, to Rick Ames. So he's a great old man, that Mr. Ames. And I can't do accents well, but I can definitely be heard without a microphone, even in this big place, because we were trained here after all. K and K, we call them the Ks. And we never say which comes first, although Kim came first on this earth. But you meant a lot to Renzo since we first joined your company in 2004. And though we knew each other here, he and I wouldn't have been so close without our work together at LMT. Next, a close friend who first met him at Shakes & Co. and then worked with him at LNT. I guess you could say she was one of his followers, literally. Here's Kate Johnson.
Much like Kim, I am going to hold my script because otherwise I'm going to fall apart. Much like Haley, I have the great privilege of being able to say that Renzo was my best friend. And this is really just kind of a window into the type of friend he was. I met Renzo the summer of 2010. Our friendship began the moment I started singing along to a song on his playlist in the Shakes & Co. bar. It was Blow Me Up, a fairly obscure 80s song by Will and the Bushmen. I had gotten the cassette tape as a kid from my stepsister's ex-husband who worked at a college radio station. I told him this, and excitedly, Renzo began to tell me about his college radio station days, the Radio Renzo Show, and then on a whim he asked if I also liked poetry. I remember my response as if it was yesterday. I said, I love Charles Bukowski, and I just started on Billy Collins' The Trouble with Poetry and Other Poems. It came out a couple years ago, but I just got it now. Have you read it? Realize now that that was a very silly question. I asked him if he liked old movies. In return, I got, look at the state of me. I've never not cried watching the end of Charlie Chaplin's City Lights. With his affinity for the beats, it seems appropriate to draw this comparison and to mention what Catherine Casamo once said about Neil Cassidy. All of a sudden, out pops this man almost from nowhere. When he opened his mouth, he said about 40 words, and all of a sudden, everything in the universe was and is all right and all beautiful and all funny and all meaningful all at the same time. It was like that. Our souls, our essence, whatever you want to call it, connected that night, and we chatted until the sun came up. We met again later that next day, and the following, to commiserate over shows. our theater journeys. My professional career started in New Hampshire, so you can only imagine the lecture I got on why Vermont is superior. We connected over our love of high school French and how we wish that we had reason to speak it more often. We talked about our relationships with Shakespeare, relationships in general, and we found in each other kindred spirits, the likes of which I don't think either of us had encountered so fully before. We were nearly inseparable the 3 years that I worked consistently in the Berkshires, going to karaoke with DJ Dennis, watching every single Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin film, dominating trivia nights at various local watering holes. He was surprised that I had never auditioned for Jeopardy myself, considering that it seemed like any rare gap in his knowledge I was able to fill in and add fun facts that were new to him. We saw countless shows and went for long drives in the Prius, sometimes up to Vermont, sometimes Western New York, to find a stream, a bridge, a restaurant, or simply just to enjoy the scenery and count how many birds or skunks we saw. When I had to leave the Berkshires, he was nothing but encouraging, though he apologized in advance in case he lost touch, because he said that he struggled with consistency in friendships. I remember telling him, "Well, you've never been my friend long distance before. I think we'll be fine." And I was right. Shortly after, I landed a contract that brought me back to the area, this time to Hubbard Hall in upstate New York, where I got to work with him several more times. And it put me close enough to easily wander down to the Berkshires to go to karaoke now and then and come up to Vermont to see his shows here. Playing Auguste in Undine, Iago in Othello, and of course David in Judavine for a second time were to my mind some of his most stunning dramatic performances. I was so proud of the work that he did on stage, and he's truly one of my favorite actors. When I moved out to Boston and then later Michigan, we still managed to see each other in person every few months, whether it was a special trip he made out to Boston or me coming to see him work his comedy chops at the Majestic with his beloved co-star Jack, or the sheer dumb luck of us being in New York City at the same time, completely unplanned, and having an impromptu lunch on 42nd Street together. In the 14 and a half years since we met, I think the longest we ever didn't speak to each other was 6 days. And that was usually when Tech Week was coinciding for the both of us. And the longest we hadn't seen each other due to COVID was 10 months. For someone who once thought he was inconsistent in friendship, he certainly knew how to be a constant force of good in my life. We took blurry selfies because we were usually laughing when we were together. We celebrated our successes. We held each other and cried to mourn our losses. I would cheer him on every time he had to rescue a bird that had flown indoors, at least 6 times that I can recall. He sent me first drafts of poems for my input. I sent him pictures of baby cows to make him smile. He always sent me a picture of a bunny when it crossed his path. On challenging days, he would fall back on his Buddhist studies, citing, "All is change," or "Right now, it's like this," and never hesitated to remind me of it when I needed it. Though this time of change hurts like hell, dearest Renzo, I wouldn't trade a single minute of being your friend for anything. Your threads are so deeply woven through the tapestry of my life that I can hardly tell which are yours and which are mine in some places. I buy Vermont Cabot cheddar. I use Vermont maple syrup. The cutting board in my kitchen was a wedding present from him, along with a poem that he wrote for the day. I use my Crow Bookshop tote bag every time I need to bring something into the house from my car. My bookshelves have books that we've both read, books he gave me, and books we disagreed on. The TV suggests that I watch Chopped, or Bake Off, or Broadchurch, the first 2 of which we spent hours watching together, and the latter drove him to use his best Scottish accent, reciting chunks of David Tennant's dialogue, much to my delight. It has been hard going through daily life without texting my best pal, but I'm comforted a little by the reminders of him everywhere. Everything we have in common has become sacred to me. I blessedly got to know one of the kindest and gentlest souls ever to walk this plane of existence, and was honored to know that he too called me his dear friend. Finally, he always used to say that people should read more poems. So I'll close this one out with a short one from Nat Rozanska. It requires a tiny bit of high school French, so for those of you who don't know or don't remember, in French, you don't say, I miss you. You say, tu me manques, which translates closer to you from me are missing, or you are missing from me. And I hope this can resonate with many of you. Most days I miss you in English. On the worst, I miss you in French. You are missing from me. I am lacking in you, a vital part, as essential as air, as bones, as blood, a lost immune system that can't keep illness at bay, an amputation, a lobotomy. There is no single word that covers a lack of you. I miss you out of language, but French is the closest. Tu me manques. Thank you.
So usually I like to stick to the script, but this has gone about close to 40 minutes longer for the first act than I thought it would. So next time, when this happens for me, actually Greg Niquette's maybe not longer here, but I was going to ask him to make sure to allow time for crying and hugging and laughter and applause and getting up to the stage. So my scheduling skills were not so great. So I would kind of like to, Kyra, are we able to skip my silly joke and I can put it on Facebook, my graphic? Okay. Look for it on in the event if you're on Facebook. But we will go on. I will just say this. Thank you, Kate, for flying in from Chicago to be here. You're one of many who've come long distances with us today. And I think rather than take an intermission, the coffee might get cold, but we'll have snacks for you on the way out. We'll just wrap up within several minutes now, if that's okay. No one was more aware than Renzo that, to quote the aphorism purportedly coined by Alexander Graham Bell, when one door closes, another door opens. Renzo, with his castmates, like Jack and others, proved this to hilarious effect in door-slamming farces like Noises Off, Boing Boing, Don't Dress for Dinner, and The Play That Goes Wrong. Ashley, look for yourself in this, if you're still with us.
Hey, everybody, welcome back.
That's okay. That's all right. Anything else I wanted to say while we wait? Well, if while we're waiting, are we set? Or okay, go ahead. Thank you all at home watching.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. Well, it's opening night of the play that I'm in, so today's poem is called Opening Night by Shel Silverstein. She had the jitters, she had the flu, she showed up late, she missed her cue, she kicked the director, she screamed at the crew, and tripped on a prop and fell in some goo and ripped her costume a place or two. Then she forgot a line she knew and went meow instead of moo. She heard him giggle, she heard him boo. The program sailed and the popcorn flew. As she stomped off stage with a boo-hoo-hoo, the fringe of the curtain got caught in her shoe. The set crashed down, the lights did too. Maybe that's why she didn't want to do an interview. Break a leg with whatever you are up today, and thanks for checking us out. Stop by the bookstore sometime soon, and we'll see you again soon.
I love Shel Silverstein. That was something I wasn't aware of, that piece of his. So can we go right to Disappeared, Kyra? Not right to, but raise your hand if you have something you want to say from the audience, even after this, before I know, yeah. You can come up here too if you'd like, but the rest of you, anybody feel compelled to have this? And Ronnie, okay. So only a couple, we'll squeeze you in. And Aaron, okay. Last call, as Renzo would say, bartender, last call. Okay, and Ashley. And I know Ashley's flying out. She flew in at a noon flight to Burlington. She's flying out on a 4 o'clock flight. We got you the right outfit. You could just be the flying nun and you could take off. Thanks for your patience, folks. He deserves it. This is still going to come in. Even if we had gone with the second act, it would still come in shorter than the first week of performances of Mother Courage and her children. It was a long show. It was a great show, but it was long, and we had to cut some of it. And I just wanted to make Kathleen and Kim laugh, and Bob Nooner, and who else was in that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hope we have some chat on the live stream from people watching.
The Disappeared by Barry Gifford. People disappear all the time. People with whom you've done or planned to do business. People you used to see at the bar, walking past your house, been in love with, lived with, even married. The disappearing Mexicans, Brazilians, Italians, a few French, some Russians. How is it they disappear so easily, suddenly, completely, out of indifference, dislike, imprisonment, insanity, denial, death? They're gone. Some you miss, some you don't. But it's so often a mystery. You might hear about them in the news from a friend. Think you've spotted them hurrying by on a busy street, or receive a birthday card without a return address from someone you met on a ship. People who don't need you anymore or think you don't need them. They're usually right. No, I can't forget them. The ones who've gotten lost. After all, I've gotten lost myself. And I know where I am, even if they don't.
So, Kyra, you want to do it from there? Or come on up. So, Renzo's fantastic friend and my new friend, Kyra Taberman, who used her expertise to assemble all the video montages that we've been shown today in here. Kyra, come on up and share.
I want to say thank you to all of you. Oh, thank you. When I knew Renzo, it was the fall of 2009, and we were both fundamentally lonely people. Excuse me, I didn't prepare at all. So, sorry. We came into each other's lives, much like Kate said, at the exact right time. We were both open to the experience, to the possibility, and we connected on a level that I hadn't with anyone before or since. But Renzo got me this journal, and I dug it out as soon as I heard the news, because I knew there would be a lesson somewhere in here. So I'm going to read a brief excerpt that he had glued to the front page. Before I point out, though, the second plan was going to be reading this poem, which is on one of the first pages, entitled Litany by Billy Collins. I figured I'll leave that one be. Sorry, if you can't tell, I'm very nervous. How to Be a Good Buddhist by Pablo Das. Come home, finally, to yourself. Decide to stop running from difficult or uncomfortable experiences. This means you may have to experience grief, loss, fear, disappointment, terror, or loneliness. Let your armor down. You can endure it. Whatever it is, it's not personal. Soak up whatever pleasurable experiences arise with every pore and every cell of your being. This moment is thoroughly unique and will never happen again. But expect that sooner than you'd like, this pleasure will be replaced by a new experience. And when that happens, let it go. Know precisely what each experience is made of. Know each part. Here's a complete list of possible parts. Sense impressions on the eardrum, sense impressions on the retina, sense impressions on the nostril, on the tongue, bodily touch sensations, bodily sensations of an emotional origin, internal talk, internal image and consciousness, and if you're a Dharma punk, the internal mixtape. Knowing which of these parts are present in any given experience diminishes the allure of the experience, but the tendency to make it parts into a thing. The experience is empty. Don't get involved. Understand that you are not defined by any of these experiences and that none of them last. Understand that each experience arises out of the conditions that precede it and cannot exist independent of those conditions. You must develop the capacity to be present for whatever arises in your experience, whether you like it, dislike it, or it bores you. Understand, and this is critical, understand and accept on the deepest level that no matter what it is, it's never quite right. Never. Nevertheless, love what is. Forgive everyone, everything, including yourself. Love indiscriminately, starting with yourself. Don't give it all away, just most of it. Speaking of giving it away, renounce whatever hinders you from doing all of the above, understanding that renunciation is not about deprivation. It is about freedom. But it's not like the American brand of freedom that you're used to. You should be not so much concerned with freedom to as you are with freedom from. And one last thing, welcome home. Now never abandon yourself again.
Hello, hello. Yeah, I'm going to do a little Donahue Oprah thing, bring this down into the audience now. If you look under your seats, no, there's nothing under your seats. But we'll start, and we, unlike the Oscars, we won't have a disappointed John Lithgow to look at you when you go over time, but we might have a disappointed Kim Bent or Billy Collins.
Oh, let me stick it up.
Okay.
Are you able to hold it for me? Okay. You gotta get kind of close. I can project.
Oh, I know, but we want to hear it online.
Oh, you will hear it. That's good right there. Is that good? Okay. First of all, is this too much? Okay. When I was walking out of the apartment today, I was all in black, and I always wear, as much as possible, my element, which is the sun. And I was walking out, I thought, no, this is Renzo, so I have colors. So I put my favorite little necklace on in, in memory of the fact that just a couple of weeks ago, I lost my other favorite necklace. So I thought, okay, this is a good thing. And then I was walking out, and I saw this, and it's a birthday Christmas present from my friend Ramona. And when she gave it to me, I opened up the box, and I saw it, and I went, oh, this is gorgeous. In my mind, I went, where am I going to wear that? But I love it, and in the apartment, sometime I'll go around and I'll play with it. So I decided that was what was needed to be here today, is a lot of color, because even hearing other people's memories about Renzo bring memories further for me, deeper memories. One thing that I told Rick yesterday when we were visiting and talking about Renzo is that I met Renzo the fall after he graduated from St. Mike's. So that was in 94, the fall of 90, what? 93. So, oh yes, so 93 was the fall of 93. And he was in this production that we were doing called the Shakespeare Showcase. And it was basically, we called it a smorgasbord of the Bard. And it was little bits and pieces that we originated, but also used Shakespeare to edutain the audiences. And he was in that. And that was also the year that my little sister, who had Down syndrome, came to be with me to guardianship because our mother had passed. And so I met Renzo, and Bibi was a part of the theater community as well, and so I got to see people participate with it and with her. So all those memories came back, and then I thought about it when I was talking with Rick, and I said, if my mother had met Renzo her description of him would have been, "Qué curioso ese." My description is, "Still waters run deep." And I think we're both saying the same thing when my mother said that. So in tribute to Renzo, because I have so many other memories, I just have a couple of pieces that I'd like to read. One is Shakespeare, and the other is from an author that I introduced Renzo to, and then also would use the piece on the back of the programs for every annual Best Christmas Pageant Ever production. That's the title of it, that my company would do. The first one. This is Sonnet 12, Shakespeare, of course. "When I do count the clock that tells the time, and see brave day sunk in hideous night, when I behold the violet past prime, and sable curls, all silvered o'er in white, when I see lofty trees, barren of leaves, which erst from heat did canopy the herd, and nature's greens all girded up in sheaves, borne on the bier with white and bristly beard, then of thy beauty do I question make, that thou amongst the waste of time must go, for sweets and beauties do themselves forsake, and die as fast as they see others grow. And nothing 'gainst time's scythe can make defense save breed to brave him when he takes thee hence." The second is Robert Fulgham. And when I first met Renzo, again, when he was first out of college, a group of them came over to my apartment, and Renzo, of course, gravitated toward the bookcase in my apartment. My background, beside being theater, was I was also a librarian for a graduate theater company and a graduate school, and also was a part-time person in a bookstore, and I also had done the inventory for the Juana Laban collection, and he was all about this, all about inventory, and I would describe to him some of the books that I came across. That was like one of them in particular. You may not know the context of this, but one of the books in particular, and he sat there just mesmerized by my description of it, and I said, "It's just this little book about that big, and it's called The Habsburgs, and it was published, created, whatever, in the 1600s, and it maybe had 50 pages, and every other page was a watercolored, hand watercolored, whatever the picture was, hand watercolored for that particular book." It was amazing, and he couldn't, and he just kept eating up all these stories that I have. So anyway, I introduced him to Roger Fulgham, and I don't know if you know who Roger Fulgham is. He died, obviously, but he was a minister, and he wrote a book called Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And there was a sequence from that I just fell in love with when I first read, and I put it, like I said, on the back of every single program for about 10, 12 years that we were doing this annual Christmas pageant for the community. And this is the way the sequence goes that was always on the back of the program. Everything I really need to know about how to live and what to do and how to be, I learned in kindergarten. Wisdom was not at the top of the graduate school mountain, but there in the sandpile at Sunday school. These are the things I learned. Share everything, play fair, don't hit people, put things back where you found them, clean up your own mess, don't take things that aren't yours. Say you're sorry when you hurt people. Wash your hands before you eat. Flush. Warm cookies and cold milk are good for you. Live a balanced life. Learn some and think some and draw and paint and sing and dance and play and work every day some, and then take a nap every afternoon. When you go out into the world, watch out for traffic, hold hands, and stick together. Wonder. Wonder. Remember the little seed in the styrofoam cup? The roots go down and the plant goes up, and nobody knows how or why. But we are all like that. Goldfish and hamsters and white mice, and even the little seed in the styrofoam cup. They all die. And so do we. And then, remember, the Dick and Jane books, and the first word you learned, the biggest word of all, look. Look. Think. Everything you need to know is in there somewhere. The golden rule and love and basic sanitation, ecology and politics, and equality and sane living. Think what a better world it would be if we all, the whole world, had cookies and milk about 3 o'clock every afternoon and then lay down with our blankies for a nap. Or if all governments had as a basic policy to always put things back where they found them and to clean up their own mess. And it is still true. No matter how old you are, when you go out into the world, hold hands and stick together. And this is a very quick one. We are all here together. Renzo's in our heart. He's not here corporally, but I think we all know, and Juliet in Shakespeare's Juliet, in these few little lines, have always expressed to me where we do go when we die. And when he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars, that he shall make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with night and pay no worship to the garish sun.
Thanks, Ronnie. And Ashley, in case you need to leave soon.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Sorry, Renzo is so loving this, don't you think? Sorry, I don't mean to put my back to y'all, but if this gets messy, look at the cow, okay? This is for Renzo. This is an excerpt from Lines Depicting Simple Happiness by Peter Gizzi, or Gizzi. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, and Renzo is mad at me for that. It feels right to notice all the shiny things about you. About you, there is nothing I wouldn't want to know. With you, nothing is simple, yet nothing is simpler. About you, many good things come into relation. I think of proofs and grammar, vowel sounds.
I'm going to go down here just so everybody doesn't have to crane their neck and just make life easier. I'm not entirely sure where to start because a gazillion and 6 memories keep popping up in my head about Renzo. One, yes, I'm wearing this shirt because this is the first show we ever did together. It was also my first show I ever did on stage. I had been on stage before playing in bands, but never in theater. And I got blessed enough, 2 out of my first 3 shows were Shakespeare, and they were both with Renzo. You can't ask for a better mentor. Between him and both of them were with him and David DeLego. And come on, that's just, it's an embarrassment of blessings and riches. Having those people, you know, helping you learn and understand Shakespeare, which was just, yeah, anyway. We also, we became really, really fast friends right off the bat. I mean, but by the time this production was done, we were thick as thieves, and it was amazing. Met an insane amount of late nights at the house or at bars or whatnot, talking about this, that, and everything else. And I don't have a mind for poetry, so we didn't quite connect there like the majority of you did. But we did connect on theater, movies, and music, especially movies and music. And he introduced me. He introduced me to Eric Bogosian and talk radio. which became one of the most incredible moments in my life because after he won Jeopardy, he used some of the money to produce a production of talk radio. I fell in love with that show when he introduced it to me, and he wanted me to direct it. He played Barry Champlain, I played Stu, Rick was in it, a number of other people were in it. It was an amazing thing. Little show we did at 242 Main. I will always hold that it has always been a connection for us. 2 days before he died, he actually tagged me in a post of the opening scene of talk radio on Facebook. It was a continuous thing between us, as well as the Blues Brothers. Were also, because anytime we were at karaoke, he would go up and want to do something with the Blues Brothers, and he always had me come up to be Elwood. To the point where we would show up with our fedoras, our sunglasses, and I actually brought a marker and we'd write Jake and Elwood on our knuckles and do the Blues Brothers. But there was also one big thing that literally just popped in my head while I was sitting here today, and it was from when he was on Jeopardy. Going back to when we did A Midsummer Night's Dream, I played Oberon. He was bottom, and I had these mannerisms that I did with my hand that he was just like, do that stuff. Those are power moves. Just the way I pointed at things, the way I held my hands. And I had this thing. One second. See if I can do this without making a really bad crashing sound. Oh, screw it. I'll just do it. I had this. I would stand like this as Oberon, and he's just like, do that as much as you can. That is such a power move. His the second episode of Jeopardy that he was on, while he was talking to Alex Trebek after the show, this was before when everybody, they would crowd together and talk to Alex after the show while the credits were playing, and there he was. After that show aired, he's just like, did you see it? I'm like, you're fucking right, I did, man. I love that man so much. And just about every single thing that I've done creatively ever since I met him, he's been an influence on it. So, thank you. That's it.
I have a whole story, but long story short, we got the urn because I went looking for an urn on Church Street, and I saw a guy a theater friend who hasn't worked with Renzo, but I haven't actually worked with him yet. John Jensen worked at a store named 10,000 Villages, and that is now closed. And I said to John, I'm looking for something affordable that will serve as an urn. And John said, you need an urn? I have an urn, and you can have it. And it was in the back room of this shop that didn't sell urns. They had been sent it by corporate over almost a year ago, and it was meant to be. And but why it's so important, and also with his ashes are some sand from Lake Champlain that he kept in his apartment in Lenox and burned incense sticks in. So it meant a lot to him in different ways. And Kate told us that he wanted it to go with him. So here's why it was so important with me to have him here with us today up on this stage before he's interred with his father at Resurrection Park. Like many of us who earned our drama degrees from this institution, this is likely the stage where Renzo performed as much as or more than at any other venue. Once he became a member of the Actors Equity Union, he attempted in vain to be cast in summer stock productions here at St. Michael's Playhouse. Their reluctance to consider him for such roles caused him great consternation. St. Michael's Playhouse is sadly currently defunct. So I have put on the mantle of casting director to place Renzo in his final appearance here on this stage. The same place where he dazzled audiences as Puck in Midsummer, where he played Adam in Arthur Miller's Creation of the World and Other Business to My Lucifer, where he directed and starred in his senior show, Bloody Poetry. While he wasn't rehearsing for or expecting to begin a future production, he also didn't know that his last show would be his last show. So this is his last show. I hope you'll join me in just a moment when I say this long paragraph in offering him a final round of applause, a standing ovation even by those who are able, for giving us a plenitude of perfectly precise portrayals, sharing with us a multitude of meaningful poems, developing countless deep and lasting relationships for a spectacular performance in his lifetime role as a beautiful human, an existence well lived. Congratulations, Renzo. You did so much in your 53 years, more, I think, than you ever really knew. Bravo. Thank you all, everyone, for being here with us today, and all of you who are watching and all of you who will watch the recording. Please feel free to commune with each other here in the theater or in the lobby before you go. We're not in a rush to get out of here. Thank you.